Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read TFOS, where I take stories I've narrated before and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called The Cold Case of the Pirates vs. Fred, written by chuckysnow. This hearing will come to order, bellowed Trausk, adjudicator of Galactic Sector Upsilon Beta. It was attempting to settle the near riot of creatures before him. Despite his anger, he knew that a failed negotiation could very well start an open war. The Draconi, pirates, and scoundrels though they were, certainly knew how to bend the laws in their favor, and the evidence before him in the case involved enough death and destruction to go around. This had better go well, he thought to himself. To all assembled parties, I wish as much as you that we come to an equitable conclusion today. But that cannot happen if we cannot at least start to quiet down and proceed in a formal manner, Trausk barked. I'd be happy if we settled this in orbit. The head of the Draconi party spat at the Judicar. We have been thoroughly wronged, and we seek nothing less than blood for blood. A small, mostly hairless mammal on the opposing side snickered. Trausk banged his gavel again, and finally the assembled parties settled down enough for the hearing to start. If we might start, would the Draconi delegation wish to convey their grievance to the court? Trausk asked. He kept an eye on the virtual mob of creatures in the gallery. Behind the plaintiffs were another 20 Draconi. The defendant's side had a collection of a dozen different species, and no one seemed happy. They did not appear to be on the side of the Draconi. If anything, the group seemed ready to pounce on the 5 grey-skinned reptilians seated at the table. Thank you, Your Honor. We of the Draconi wish to complain most heartily of the crimes committed against us by the human sitting there. We consider his actions nothing less than a level 1 crime against our illustrious species and demand recompense. I, Rufinus Glarnock of the House Kalukian, represent myself and my 4 comrades, but I also represent the whole Draconi race, and we cannot allow the actions of that human. Fred, the human interjected. Rufinus was distracted for a moment. What exactly is Fred? My translation does not understand it. That's my name, Fred, said Fred. Fred, do you have a house you represent? The Judicar asked. No house, and I'm guessing I'm the first Fred that you've come across, so you can just call me Fred. You would be correct. Rufinus, you may continue, directed Trausk. Regaining his composure, but losing much of his bluster, the Draconi continued. Our complaint is very simple. After encountering this Fred and the freighter he was on, we attempted to engage his captain in trade. Things did not go well, and the captain's life was sadly sacrificed. The crowd's rumblings grew louder, and he was forced to raise his own voice. Though unfortunate, nothing that transpired was illegal under the inter-system law. We then felt that the best course of action would be for us to secure the ship and release the crew. We brought the ship back to one of our own bases, where we fully intended to contact the rightful owners of the ship and legally negotiate the release of the ship and cargo. But before we could do that, the ship somehow exploded, destroying itself, our base, 24 other ships, and several thousand of my species. We thought at first that we might have done something in transit that caused this calamity. However, we then learned that Fred was taking responsibility for the crime. The crowd again rose in volume. Translators couldn't handle all the traffic, and it was impossible to determine whether they were mad or not. But Trausk imagined that they couldn't be happy. He turned his attention to the creature called Fred. Fred, do you dispute the charges put before you? Oh, I blew up the ship all right, but the rest of that is a pile of bovine excrement. I'm sorry, I believe you used a phrase unknown to my translator. What is bovine excrement? Fred himself was confused as his own translator tried to keep up. Oh, I'm just saying that those Draconi are pirates and liars, and they're just mad that they got what was coming to them for once. The room got much quieter as everyone waited to understand, and jeers went out as the translator spit out Fred's declaration. We firmly dispute the term pirate in this affair. By law, we're allowed to attempt to purchase any cargo flying in any ship. It is up to the captain and crew if that purchase be fair. If you offer to trade cargo for our lives, then you're just a damned pirate, Fred countered. Trask again banged his gravel. Red, would you please entertain the court with your side of the story? Sure thing, and those guys are right. It's pretty simple. We were getting ready to head into warp when we were fired on by a ship full of Draconi. Those Draconi are known as the biggest pirates in the sector, and I'm sure it isn't the first time that you've had to deal with them. The Judicator quietly nodded in agreement. They locked onto us and boarded before we could do anything about it. They did the usual, round up the crew, slap a few of us around, threatened the captain. The captain didn't move as fast as they wanted, and they just shot him in cold blood. Red saw the confusion and added, they killed him without preamble, for no reason other than to scare the rest of the crew, and for the most part, that worked. As slow as the Draconi are, they usually let the crew hop into a shuttle or life raft. Easier to scuttle us than outright murdering all of us, and save them the hassle of courts like this. I guess they don't have the time for kidnapping. Theft is good enough. Problem the Draconi had this time around were twofold. One, the captain owned his own ship. As you, and now they are aware, it's a much different deal to kill the owner than it is to kill the captain. I'd imagine that owners wrote more laws than captains have, which is why owners are so protected. The raiders killed our captain before he could even tell them this. Not sure it would have mattered. But, too, I was on board, and I'd already had a run-in with these guys. Last time, I spent 2 weeks drifting in a life raft, and the company I was working for didn't pay me for my trouble. That didn't sit too well with me, so I figured I wouldn't let it happen again. So the next ship I hired onto, I added a couple of things to the engine. I got the captain's full permission to add the stuff, by the way. One was a bomb, the second was a timer. Every morning, I reset that timer. The idea was that if I or the captain didn't reset the timer, something had happened to me and the crew. Whoever did something to us would get something done to them. I guess it worked, since they had a radical breach event in their base. Yes, I should also mention that I spent a bunch of spare time learning all I could about maritime law. I found out that getting stuck in a life raft without pay is perfectly legal, as well as a bunch of shenanigans the Draconi partake in. They seem to know what they can and cannot do, to stay just on the right side of the law. I figured I'd better learn a few things myself, and I found a couple things that have a bit of bearing here. What the Draconi don't seem to know is that a ship without an owner is fair game to literally the first person that lays claim to it. This I did the second they killed my captain. Red turned to the gallery. How many of you were on our ship? The Gurnotner. Roughly half the crowd raised their appendages. And how many of you heard me lay claim to the ship after our captain was shot? The same crowd raised again. The Draconi seemed confused. The judge did not. Fred then looked at the small tablet in his hand. So, Your Honor, if I understand your maritime law, specifically Section 824.65a of the Maritime Salvage Code, with at least 4 witnesses on my side, the Gurnotner was my ship when I was forcibly removed from it, and keeping me from my ship led me to losing possession of my ship and cargo when it exploded. The fact that the Draconi were too stupid to check for security measures means that I, as the owner, am completely blameless to any losses they have incurred. Red looked at the 5, who sat with their jaws open in shock. Furthermore, I call on Section 827.3c, which basically says that they stole my ship, let it get destroyed, and I'm allowed to claim damages in the amount of 10 times the original value. The Draconi started making growls and talking among themselves. I'm sure they did not have insurance on my vessel, so those funds are directly payable by those guys, Fred said as he pointed at the adversaries, and to the group behind them in the gallery. I would like to take this time to announce that I'm sharing those proceeds with my crew and the family of our captain, Fred said to the delayed cheers from the gallery. The judge had to smile. It was a bold move for the Draconi to even bring this lawsuit, but they couldn't possibly have asked for a worse turnout. He pressed a button on his bench, and a cage of laser beams went up around the Draconi. They suddenly looked terrified. So, Mr. Glarnock, you obviously speak for your house and your cohorts. I'm going to speak very plainly to you, and you want to answer my following questions in a yes or no manner. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, the cowed Draconi responded. Did you know that you and your associates killed the owner of the Gurtnutner, which is a capital crime? No, we did not. Do you understand that by putting the name of your house on this lawsuit, you are directly implicating your entire house in the death of the ship owner? Yes, sir. Yes, I do. With the knowledge that you cannot legally kill an owner and then claim his ship, do you now see that Fred appears to be the legal owner of the ship in question? The Draconi looked at each other for a moment, then responded, Yes, we do. And do you understand that by keeping him from his ship, he is in no way responsible for the security measures aboard his ship, up to and including self-destruction, and additionally, any loss of life and property damage related to your illegal confiscation of his ship are legally on you and not on Fred? The answer came slower, but finally he responded, Yes. And since under oath you have readily admitted to all of the above aside from the capital offenses, you now owe Fred a goodly deal of money. Yes. The adjudicator started tapping away at his screens. And do you have payment available? Court documents list the value of the ship at roughly 25 million, and the cargo was worth 15 million. It would seem that you owe Fred 400 million. Knowing that as Speaker of your House, you have placed this debt on you and your entire house, you will not be able to leave the court, and your house will not be able to perform any business dealings not directly related to paying Fred. Do you understand this? The 7-foot reptile quietly answered, Yes. Do you have this amount available? I do not believe my entire house is worth 400 million. That was not a yes or no answer, but the court will accept it. By order of the court, due to the plaintiff refusing to pay, I am issuing a full hold on all family colloquian property, accounts, and other holdings until such time as Fred is satisfied. Several members of the gallery behind the plaintiffs tried to sneak away, but were held back by the court officers. Your Honor, if it pleases the court, I wish to take possession of Mr. Glarnack's ship to begin paying off his house's debt to me. Although under law, specifically 827.7d, I'm only assessing scrap value for their ship. According to an estimate I received a few days ago, the value is only 500,000. At that, the Glarnack started to choke. That ship is worth 10 million, he exclaimed, only to see the beams of his cage glow brighter. That may be, but the laws that have let you legally pirate ships and crews for years are the same ones that allow Fred here to seize your ship for scrap value, the judge answered, with some amount of satisfaction. Fred, is there anything else we have not addressed? You seem to have come better prepared than Draconi. Yes, Your Honor. I fully authorize anyone who wished to work on my behalf to secure any and all colloquian property. I will pay any bounty hunters 50% of what they can obtain from anyone from this house. Fred turned to his adversaries. And as authorized bounty hunters, you will have great latitude in how you are allowed to reclaim my money. I wish good luck to you all. Fred held up a sheet of paper. This is a declaration that the Draconi refused to pay, and I therefore authorize force in retrieving their assets. The Draconi sat in stunned silence, knowing that Fred had all but issued a legal death sentence to every member of their house. We did not refuse to pay. I stated that we cannot pay. The judge smiled. Legally, there is no difference, and since I am aware of at least one instance you yourselves used this rule to keep cargo you are charging rent for, I know that you are aware of it. A clerk took the paper from Fred, and with less than a minute's time, every necessary document had been created, signed, copied, and filed. Fred was now the owner of the Draconi ship in orbit, and effectively their entire house. As he created legal shares of his new company for his old crewmates in the gallery, the Draconi turned an even lighter shade of grey. They looked quite ill. Fred noticed this. He quietly rolled his chair across the aisle. I'm an outsider and certainly new to your ways, but for the crime of making me spend 2 weeks in a lifeboat, I just destroyed everything you've ever known. Imagine what I'd be willing to do if any of you idiots decided to come after me and my friends. Pass this along to the other houses. I'll be sending out a few freighters that your house is going to buy me. If they, or any other ships ever get messed with again, I'll see to it that we do more than simply kill a few thousand of you." Fred smiled as he stood up. "Make sure your house knows that every outlaw in the sector is about to rain hellfire on them to get my money. And if you ever escape prison, the captain has plenty of friends that'll be waiting for you. And I'll be right there with them. Have a nice day." End of story. I would just like to thank the T5 supporters: Bushmaster 117, Casper Arnholtz, Drexzoon WRE, Elijah Silvercross, Gray, John Carrington, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.